In this special Aussie report is an overall examination of allegations surrounding systemic corruption, abuse of power, intimidation and institutional failures within SAPOL. Drawing from public cases, personal accounts and documented incidents, it explores ongoing concerns about accountability, transparency and the culture surrounding policing in South Australia. Most of us grow up hearing the same thing over and over. Trust the police. They protect the vulnerable. They stand between good people and the worst parts of society. But in South Australia, more and more people are starting to ask a brutal question. What happens when the people wearing the badge become part of the danger themselves? Because this isn't about one scandal anymore. It isn't about one rogue cop. It isn't about one bad decision buried in an old headline. The stories keep coming. Sexual abuse, child exploitation cases, domestic violence, corruption investigations, abuse of authority, officers accused of targeting the very people they were sworn to protect. And every new report eats away at the public trust a little more. One former SAPOL officer was sentenced to 20 years in prison after being found guilty of sexually abusing 2 young stepdaughters throughout their childhood. 20 years. Think about that, what that actually means. Years of fear, years of silence, years where a child was trapped under the authority of someone wearing a police uniform. Another former officer, Simon Gorzachowski, was jailed after being convicted of unlawfully having intercourse with his 15-year-old stepdaughter. During sentencing, the judge said something that cuts straight to the heart of this whole crisis. She was entitled to trust you. That's the line people can't take, because police don't just carry power, they carry public trust. Parents trust them, women trust them, children trust them. And when that trust gets weaponized by the very people meant to uphold it, the damage goes far beyond one victim. One survivor later came forward publicly and said, "If anybody has gone through something like this, I would 100% advise you to step forward and say something." That sentence carries more courage than most institutions ever will. Then there are domestic violence cases. One former detective admitted to assaulting his wife and daughter over a period of years. Not during some drunken bar fight, not a single moment of losing control. Years. Afterward, the victim stood outside court and said, "I do not trust the police." Imagine hearing that from somebody who went to the system for protection. She also said, "The system failed to protect me." That's the kind of sentence that should make an entire institution stop cold. Because if a woman feels unsafe reporting abuse involving a police officer, what does that say about the culture surrounding power inside the force? And these aren't just criminal court stories. SAPOL's own disciplinary records paint a disturbing picture by themselves. Officers disciplined for sexual misconduct. Officers accused of abusing authority. Officers improperly accessing confidential databases. Officers investigated over child exploitation material. One serving constable was arrested after allegedly taking steps toward obtaining child exploitation material. I'll read that again slowly. One serving constable was arrested after allegedly taking steps toward obtaining child exploitation material. A police officer investigated over child exploitation material. The public hears that and immediately asks the obvious question. If police are supposed to hunt predators, how does somebody like that end up inside the force in the first place? Then there's the corruption. SAPOL has been hit by allegations involving nepotism, manipulated recruitment testing, and internal favouritism linked to senior officers. Investigations exposed claims that exam results had been tampered with to help relatives and preferred candidates. No merit, no integrity, connections. And when anti-corruption investigations themselves started collapsing in scandal, things got even worse. Operation Bandicoot became one of the biggest embarrassments in recent memory. Police officers were accused of corruption, dragged through years of investigation, only for the cases to eventually collapse. One former commissioner later described it as a scandalous and flawed investigation. He also warned the public stain of corruption is one of the most severe penalties you can inflict on an innocent person. That's the nightmare sitting underneath all this. Either corruption exists and it isn't being stopped properly, or investigations are being handled so badly they destroy lives without justification. Neither possibility inspires confidence, and that's where the real damage happens. Not just in courtrooms, not just in headlines, in ordinary people quietly losing faith. Women wondering whether reporting abuse is worth the risk. Parents wondering who's really protecting children. Victims wondering whether power matters more than justice. Because trust doesn't collapse in one dramatic moment. It erodes, slowly, case by case, headline by headline, victim by victim. And every time SAPOL releases another disciplinary report involving abuse, misconduct, or corruption, the same question gets louder. How deep does this go? Now, to be clear, there are undoubtedly honest police officers out there, officers risking their lives, officers genuinely trying to protect people. But the good officers don't erase institutional failures. And the public is tired of hearing the phrase, "a few bad apples," every time another horrifying case appears. People heard that line in churches, in politics, in schools, in media organizations. Eventually, the excuse starts sounding less like reassurance and more like a script, because institutions with enormous power should face enormous scrutiny, especially when women and children are involved, especially when abuse allegations are connected to the very people trusted to stop them. At the end of the day, a badge means nothing without police trust behind it. And right now, for a growing number of people in South Australia, that trust is hanging by a thread. This was brought to you by the Aussie Report.